In today's episode, I'm going to give you the lowdown on the life of one of my favorite musicians, Miss Ella Fitzgerald. She led a fascinating life in her 79 years on this planet, jam-packed with both thrills and sadness, which means that we've got a lot to get through today, so I'm just going to jump right in. Ella Jane Fitzgerald was born in Newport News, Virginia on April 25th, 1917. Her father, William, and her mother, Temperance, called Tempy, separated shortly after she was born. Ella and her mom then migrated to Yonkers, New York, where they eventually moved into a racially mixed neighborhood with Tempy's longtime boyfriend, Joseph De Silva. Ella soon got a half-sister, Frances, who was born in 1923, and she began to think of Joe as her stepfather, even though her mom and Joe were unmarried. To support his family, Joe dug ditches and was a part-time chauffeur, while Tempy worked at a laundromat and took on private catering jobs. Ella also wanted to help out, so she took on small side jobs, including as a lookout for neighborhood brothels, and working as a runner for local gamblers, and that basically consisted of her picking up their bets and dropping off money. Ella was a personable child and made friends easily. A tomboy, she often joined in her neighborhood baseball games. She also enjoyed dancing and singing with her friends, and some nights they would take the train into Harlem and watch various acts at the Apollo Theater. Unfortunately, this relatively carefree life wouldn't last long. In 1932, Tempy died from injuries that she received in a car accident, and Ella took the loss very hard. She stayed with Joe for a short time, then Tempy's sister, Virginia, took Ella home to stay with her. Shortly afterwards, Joe suffered a heart attack and died, more tragedy, and her little sister Frances joined them. Finding her new circumstances less than ideal, Ella became increasingly unhappy. Her grades dropped dramatically, and she became truant, frequently skipping school. After getting in trouble with the police for her truancy, she was taken into custody and sent to an orphanage, which she hated, and so she ran away. This time, when the cops caught up with her, she was sent to a reform school. Living there was obviously way worse than any of her previous circumstances. The place was run down. Black girls were housed in particularly crowded quarters. They suffered abuse and beatings, and they were often shackled in their rooms, kept at times on a diet of bread and water. Ella herself suffered beatings at the hands of her caregivers, one even going so far as to hold her in the basement of one of the cottages and basically torture her. Eventually, Ella escaped from the reformatory, thank the Lord. So she's 15, broke and alone, and this is during the Great Depression, so she was pretty desperate to find a way to make some fast cash. So she decides to enter her name in a weekly drawing at the Apollo, and she wins the opportunity to compete in amateur night. So Ella goes to the theater, planning to dance, but when an incredible act called the Edwards Sisters closed the main show to much fanfare, Ella changed her mind, saying that they were the dancingest sisters around, and she felt her act couldn't possibly compete. So Ella gets on stage, and she's just standing there. The audience is booing and heckling her, so she decides that instead of dancing, she's gonna sing. She sang Hoagie Carmichael's Judy, a song she knew very well, as Connie Boswell's rendition of it was among her mother's favorites. Ella's magnificent voice instantly quieted the audience, and by the time she was done, they demanded an encore, of course. She then sang the flip side of the Boswell sisters' record, The Object of My Affections. Ella was surprised to find that on stage singing, she had no fear. She felt at home in the spotlight, whereas in her personal life, she was shy and reserved, and also self-conscious about her appearance. She knew from the moment she got on stage and felt the love and acceptance from the crowd that she wanted to sing for people the rest of her life. In the band that night was saxophonist and arranger Benny Carter. Impressed with her talent, he began introducing Ella to people who could help her launch her career. In the process, he and Ella became lifelong friends, working together often over the years. After her performance at the Apollo, Ella began entering and winning every talent show she could find. In January of 1935, she won the chance to perform for a week with the Tiny Bradshaw Band at the Harlem Opera House. It was there that Ella met drummer and bandleader Chick Webb. Even though Chick was impressed with her vocal prowess, he already had hired a male singer called Charlie Linton for the band. He offered Ella the opportunity to audition with his band when they played a dance at Yale University, saying that if the kids liked her, she stayed. Ella impressed the kids, obviously, and Chick hired her to travel with the band for $12.50 a week. By 1936, she was performing with Chick's band at the super fancy Harlem Savoy Ballroom, which was often called the world's most famous ballroom. And she also made her first recording. Love and Kisses was released with middling success. But shortly afterwards, Ella began singing a rendition of the song, If You Can't Sing It, You Have to Swing It. During this time, the era of big swing bands was shifting, and the focus was turning more towards bebop. Ella played with the new style, often using her voice to take on the role of another horn in the band. You Have to Swing It was one of the first times she began experimenting with scat singing, and her improvisation and vocalization thrilled fans. Throughout her career, Ella would come to master the art of scat singing and become well known for it. She kept up a rigorous touring schedule during this time, but she still found moments to get her groove on with a few of the musicians she met on the road. This grooving may have had unintended consequences. In 1937, a rare interruption to her touring schedule took place. The cause is officially unknown, but her biographer speculated that she left to have an abortion and took time to recover after it went wrong, which is perhaps the reason why she would never have her own biological children. In 1938, at the age of 21, Ella recorded a version of the nursery rhyme A Tisket, a Tasket. The album sold 1 million copies, hit number 1, and stayed on the pop charts for 17 weeks. Suddenly, Ella was a star. On June 16, 1939, unfortunately, her mentor, Chick Webb, passed away, and the band was renamed Ella Fitzgerald and her famous band, with Ella as bandleader, a position she had never held before. She recorded nearly 150 songs with Webb's orchestra between 1935 and 1942. In addition to her work with Webb, Fitzgerald performed and recorded with the Benny Goodman Orchestra and had her own side project known as Ella Fitzgerald and her Savoy 8. While singing and managing a band was difficult, obviously, and time-consuming, she was able to find time for love in 1941 when she married Benny Corngay, a local dock worker who had been chasing her scout. Unfortunately, she found out that Benny had a criminal history, and she was persuaded that the marriage was a mistake by her management, actually, who had hired a private investigator to dig up some dirt on Benny, and dirt was found. An annulment was obtained, and apparently the judge allegedly told her, somewhat patronizingly, "You go back to singing A Tisket, a Tasket and leave the boys alone." So this man had opinions that nobody cares about. By 1942, things weren't going great with the band. They were unhappy and money was tight, so she started to work as lead singer with the Three Keys, and in July, her band played their last concert at Earl Theater in Philadelphia. Fast forwarding to 1946, Ella was on the road with a different band, Dizzy Gillespie's, and she found time for love again with his bassist, Ray Brown. They married in 1947 and eventually adopted a son, who was actually Ella's half-sister Frances's boy, and they named him Ray Jr. At the time, Ray was working for producer and manager Norman Granz on the Jazz at the Philharmonic tour. Norman saw that Ella had the chops to become an international star and convinced her to sign with him. Under his management, Ella joined the Philharmonic tour, worked with Louis Armstrong on several albums, and began producing her famous songbook series. From 1956 to 1964, she recorded covers of other musicians' albums, including those by Cole Porter, Duke Ellington, the Gershwins, Johnny Mercer, Irving Berlin, and Rodgers and Hart. The series was wildly popular, both with Ella's fans and with the artists she covered. Ira Gershwin once remarked that he never knew how good his songs were until he heard her sing them. During this time, she also began making appearances on television variety shows. She was a favorite and frequent guest on many programs, including the Bing Crosby Show, the Dinah Shore Show, the Frank Sinatra Show, and the Nat King Cole Show, among others. Her busy schedule made it difficult for her to be home often, which strained her relationship with her son, though they did become closer later in life, with Ray Jr. remarking that she gave him as much as she could, and she loved him as much as she could. And with that, I conclude the first part of my series on Ella. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about what it was like for her to be out on tour before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, details on her friendship with Marilyn Monroe, and Ella's final years. As always, if you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you the Friday after next for the conclusion.